All right, let's dive right into this incredibly moving explainer. Today, we're unpacking the true story behind a documentary that completely captured the world's attention at the Sundance Film Festival. It's a story told through raw, first-person archives that really forces us to look at the intersection of human connection, war, and the incredibly heavy responsibility of journalism.
I mean, can love actually take root in the middle of unimaginable violence? I want you to hold that question in your mind as we explore how a totally standard professional request for news footage between a journalist and a cameraman turned into a profound human connection that, frankly, neither of them saw coming.
So, Section 1. Two Worlds Divided.
To really get this story, we first have to understand the massive chasm separating our two subjects. Janae Boulos was working for the BBC, based safely in London. She's a Lebanese Christian whose family had a history of displacement. Abd al-Qadir Khabak, on the flip side, was a grassroots activist and videographer, a Syrian Muslim living in the besieged city of Aleppo, literally right in the thick of a brutal civil war. So we're looking at two completely different worlds, separated by both huge geographical distance and extreme circumstance.
And it all started with a simple text exchange. Janae was one of many international journalists banned from entering Syria at the time, so she had to rely entirely on local activists on the ground for footage. She reached out to Khabak, asking if he could find and film a story for her. His cautious, totally understandable reply, "Yes, but who are you? All I know is that you're from the BBC." That little text kicked off their working relationship, as Janae relied on Khabak to bear witness to the atrocities happening on the ground.
Moving on to Section 2, Love in a War Zone.
Okay, get this, 24 terabytes. To construct this documentary, the filmmakers sifted through an absolutely overwhelming 24 terabytes of their own archive footage, spanning 13 years. We're not just talking about standard news B-roll here. This was a deeply personal, visceral backdrop of their emerging romance, all captured in real time.
As Khabak documented the relentless bombing of hospitals and the evacuation of his city, you can actually see the tone of their messages start to shift. Brief texts like, "Are you safe?" and "I'm really worried," revealed a massive transition from professional detachment to deep personal concern. These raw, digital paper trails basically became the beating heart of their connection.
Slowly, the incredibly heavy discussions of war were punctuated by normal, everyday human things. Their professional texts evolved into sharing pictures of pets of all things, and eventually, Khabak gave Janae the Arabic pet name Little Bird. Amidst the bombings, the terror, and the rubble of Aleppo, these tiny, seemingly insignificant moments of humanity and affection became a vital shaft of light for both of them.
Which brings us to Section 3, Fleeing to Safety.
Things escalate incredibly fast here. From 2011 to 2016, they're just documenting the conflict. In 2016, they have that very first text exchange. Then in 2017, Khabak survives a horrific attack on a refugee convoy. Suddenly, he becomes a direct target of the regime, and he has absolutely no choice but to flee and cross the border into Turkey. It's a timeline that ultimately tracks all the way to the fall of the Assad regime in 2024.
So with Khabak now a refugee in Istanbul, a huge question pops up for the pair. Would a digital romance, one forged entirely through screens in a war zone, actually survive a face-to-face meeting? When Khabak finally reached safety, he couldn't believe Janae was actually willing to travel all the way from the UK to Istanbul just to have a cup of coffee with him.
But she absolutely did. They met in person for the very first time in Turkey, transitioning from this digital lifeline to a real physical bond. The documentary shows this stark visual contrast in their footage right here. Crystal blue oceans, paragliding, and sheer safety totally replacing the suffocating dust and debris of a besieged Aleppo. They were, finally, in the same room.
All right, Section 4, the ethics of journalism. Now, this explainer isn't just about a romance, it's a deep dive into the profound moral complexities of war reporting. Janae wrestled with immense survivor's guilt, being entirely safe in London while Khabak and her other contacts risked their lives daily. There is this constant, impossible tug of war between documenting the truth as an observer versus living it as a participant. It's a dynamic that completely frames the film's exploration of media ethics. And this brings us to a really heavy, pivotal moment. During that 2017 convoy bombing that killed 200 people, including many children, Khabak's human instinct entirely overrode his professional role. He dropped his camera and just ran to save injured children. But when the global press got hold of the images, they focused entirely on him as a hero. His devastating reaction? "I feel like I stole the story of those people."
The media narrative deeply upset him because he felt it completely missed the actual tragedy of the victims.
This highlights the stark, crucial difference between an internal journalist, someone experiencing the conflict directly who naturally helps their own people first, and an external journalist who reports from afar and maintains strict observation. It perfectly illustrates the cultural disconnect in global journalism, really emphasizing why Janae and Habak believe local storytellers must be the ones to share their own lived experiences, without external Western agendas being layered on top.
Finally, let's look at Section 5, Exile, Healing, and Hope.
You know, the filmmakers highlight a really difficult paradox surrounding PTSD. It wasn't until Habak reached the quiet, easy safety of the UK with Janae that his severe trauma and flashbacks were actually triggered. While he was in his home country, his brain was in constant survival mode. It was only in the stillness of safety that the reality of what he survived finally hit him.
There's this one evocative detail from the documentary that just absolutely sticks with you. Habak was unpacking an old camera from storage in London, and he realized he could still physically smell the dust of Aleppo on it. That smell immediately triggered visceral memories of collapsing and burning buildings. It's a really powerful reminder to us that while they may have found a sense of belonging with each other, the trauma of displacement physically lingers in everyday objects.
At first, they actually kept their whole marriage a total secret from their parents because of the immense barriers, decades of geopolitical tension between Lebanon and Syria, not to mention their religious differences. But the bridge they built was far stronger, rooted in their shared culture, common language, and deep human connection. They proved that genuine understanding can completely transcend political divides.
So how do they move forward? Well, to cope with the guilt of being away from their homelands, they established a home base in London and launched their own company, Habak Films. They did this specifically to protect their independent voice, totally free from broadcaster agendas. Now they're dedicating their lives to building a bridge between the Middle East and the West and are currently filming a new documentary about a Syrian refugee finding healing through beekeeping therapy. They are actively choosing to use their trauma to help others heal.
Which leaves us with one incredibly profound question. How do we build a future when we are suspended between the home we fled and the sanctuary we found? Janae and Habak live in this exact suspension every single day. But what you should really take away from this is that while the violence of war may have shaped their past, their unshakable commitment to the truth, to human dignity, and to each other is entirely writing their future. Think about that the next time you see a headline from a conflict zone. Who is holding the camera, and what is their story?